We've had a lot of information recently about the NURGLE army. We've had the roster blog, we know what units are in the army, and from that we can kind of get a picture of how the NURGLE army is going to play. So that's what we're going to look at and talk about how this army might feel to play on the battlefield and what their characteristics might well be. So to get straight into it, they look like an aggressive faction overall, with little choice of playing defensively really, as they don't really have any missile units. They've got a couple of artillery type pieces and maybe one air unit that has a ranged attack, but that's it. No conventional missile units, so you're going to be forced to be kind of rushy. Maybe you can use a little artillery before you attack, but for the most part the NURGLE army is going to be rushing forward. However, it's all apparently quite slow, so you're going to be a rush faction that can't really rush. But it seems like you're going to make up for that with regeneration and simply trying to win a war of attrition. And I think that's what the NURGLE army is really going to be all about. And that all starts with the old Nurglings, the little fellas that we see predominantly in these trailers. These little fellas, it seems like they're going to be a staple of the army. So every NURGLE army is probably going to have 4, 5, 6 units of Nurglings just to be there to kind of tie everything up. They're not going to be great damage dealers, but they should survive pretty well. Being a demon, they won't rout and run away. They also have poison like most of the army, which means they're going to take away some of the damage output of their enemy, helping them to survive. And they have another trait called Cloud of Flies, which increases their melee defense as they fight on. So again, just helps them to survive. So they're really going to be the glue that just gets everything stuck down of the enemy army, while the rest of the army tries to take them apart. And in terms of the infantry, that's going to be the job of the Plague Bearers, Forsaken, and maybe the Chaos Spawn. They're going to be getting stuck in alongside the Nurglings to try and just wear things down. Probably not going to be huge damage dealers, like I say. It's all about the war of attrition, wearing the enemies down, just making them run out of steam quickly so they can't fight, and then just lasting longer than them, basically. Kind of like what the dwarfs do, but in a slightly different fashion. As most units have poison and the Cloud of Flies ability, they're all going to be somewhat good at staying alive. So then where's the damage really going to come from? Well, that's going to be your great unclean ones with their armor-piercing damage and various spells from the lore of NURGLE. They should be the faster damage output units that are going to be needed to take on the more elite enemy units. There's also going to be the Beast of NURGLE, which sounds more like a tanky kind of unit as it does have regeneration and some debuffs to the enemy. Might be one of the faster units that's needed to harass backlines and things a little bit more. But that's really going to be the job of some of the flanking and cavalry style units, starting with the Plague Toads and the Pox Riders. So a cavalry type unit, albeit a pretty slow one as far as cavalry goes. The Plague Toads are going to be ridden by Nurglings, I think, so they're kind of the lesser version. And then the Pox Riders are going to be ridden by Plague Bearers, so they should be a fair bit stronger. So they're going to be the units on the ground trying to flank and get behind the enemy to disrupt the missile units to get that hammer and anvil as cavalry does. But that also might be the job of the Rotflies, the flying cavalry. They are apparently armor-piercing, so they're going to be one of the, by the sounds of it, few armor-piercing units, which could make them pretty valuable and pretty important, especially having that mobility in a slow army. Flying units are always pretty fast, so they should be reasonably quick. And then you have the Plague Drones, who seem to be pretty much the same thing, except they do have a bit of a ranged attack, so you will have some kind of missile attack from the air, maybe similar to deck droppers, handgunners, shooting down from the air. Whether the ranged attack is armor-piercing or maybe they're just armor-piercing in melee, we'll have to see. Those could be good though for harassing cavalries and things like that and just wearing them down before they reach the main army. You've also got Chaos Furies, as all of the Chaos armies seem to, so just a fast flying unit, going to be great for harassing missiles, something NURGLE is really going to need with all of these slow units. And then the only thing we really haven't mentioned yet is the big old Soul Grinder, which is going to be one of our few ranged attack units. It's going to have that artillery range type attack. And of course can double up to go into melee if it needs to. So another big damage dealer there, and gives you that ranged possibility. If you want it, you can just use that and try to force the enemy to come to you if they don't have the ranged advantage, of course. And we've also got Kugath as well, the legendary lord. He's going to have an artillery type ranged attack, so you'll be able to do the same thing with him. He's going to have some of the magic as well and lots of abilities, I'm sure, to help support his troops, help them win that war of attrition and outlast everyone else. There's also the plague-ridden heroes who are going to have some support abilities by the sounds of it. Again, just helping the troops. They have the lore of NURGLE magic or the lore of death potentially. They can have this palanquin mount or a Rotfly mount. So can have some options on how you use those, maybe mixed in with the front line or on the flying mount, maybe supporting the flanks or helping with the flanking itself. And then there's the cultist hero as well, but not entirely sure what he's going to do, probably more debuffing of the enemy and things like that. And then for the other Lord choices, we've got the Exalted Great Unclean One. So a big, large Lord, going to be good in the melee, probably lots of armor-piercing damage. And they can bring the magic along, Law of Nurgle or Law of Death. There's also the Herald of Nurgle Lord, who seems like the base generic Lord choice. Very similar to the Plague-Ridden, the hero with the same mounts, same magic. So he's going to be the cheap option probably. If you want to bring a cheaper Lord in the army, that boy is going to be the choice. So overall, as I say, the Nurgle playstyle, one of attrition. Trying to win that big war of attrition, just wearing the enemy down slowly but surely. You're not going to have a lot of units that do damage really quickly, but they are going to do it slowly over time, and as long as you keep them alive, they'll be able to keep doing that. And they should be good at doing that and good at staying alive, while other enemies will start to falter and run out of steam. The Nurgle units will keep on going, and they're going to have some regeneration. There's a healing spell in the Law of Nurgle, so you'll be able to heal up any unit that you like. But you are still going to have some kind of speed and mobility units to manage with the Flyers and the Plague Toad Cav that we see charging in here. And alongside all of that, you're probably going to be debuffing the enemy quite heavily with the Poison and the Cloud of Flies. The heroes are probably going to have some abilities for debuffing the enemy and taking some of their strengths away and just trying to help your units to survive more than anything. So another quite different playstyle for these Chaos armies. They seem to have done a pretty good job, and obviously it's coming from the tabletop a lot, but you've got very different playstyles between the Chaos God factions. So you've got Khorne, who's just very aggressive, very much straight up, pure damage dealing, charging forward, smashing everything in the face. Then you've got the Tzeentch army, which is a little bit more tricksy and hit and run, and you've got the barrier mechanic, so you kind of want to skirmish a bit and things like that. You've got some ranged options, you've got a lot of flyers and mobility. And then you've got the Nurgle army here that's going to be very slow, but is going to be really good at surviving, and is going to be about wearing the enemy down, being super tough with big health pools. Completely different to the other two playstyles we've seen so far. And of course, we still have Slaanesh to come, whose army I'm not too sure of. Maybe tabletop people might know a bit more, but I imagine they're going to be very fast. A lot of their units look very quick. So maybe speed is really going to be the defining trait of Slaanesh. But either way, there's pretty much an army for everybody, whatever playstyle you like to play, although I guess there's not really a super defensive Chaos faction. They're all pretty aggressive. I guess maybe Tzeentch is the more defensive choice. But yeah, exciting times ahead. Looking forward to playing some of these different armies. Looking forward to making proper army guides of these factions as well. There's a lot to get through. There's a lot to learn. We got a whole new game and a whole bunch of new factions. And then eventually we're going to see Warhammer 2 come into Warhammer 3. And there's just going to be... well, it's going to be pretty crazy to see how all of these factions kind of marry up to the Warhammer 2 factions and Warhammer 1 factions. You know, how is Nurgle going to do facing Empire? Is there going to be some massive mismatches in faction strengths and weaknesses that's going to make one faction amazingly good against the other? And obviously Warhammer, Total War Warhammer has always been kind of an asymmetric game in terms of the factions and who's strong against each other, but that's fine. That's part of it. There's usually ways to make it work somehow. Anyway, there we go. Let me know what you think of the Nurgle army. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the future.